It is now almost 4 years the full-scale war between Ukraine and Russia broke out. The conflict, which began with Russia's full-scale invasion on 24 February 2022, has now escalated beyond being merely a European issue, significantly impacting the entire security order of Euro-Atlantic and the Indo-Pacific regions. One of the most significant changes is North Korea's substantial involvement in the war. Commencing in the autumn of 2024, the North Korean military initiated the deployment of over 10,000 troops with Russia, and more, estimated total of approximately 40,000 expected to be deployed this and next year. In April 2025, the capital city of North Korea, Pyongyang, officially acknowledged this military dispatch for the first time. That the initial assessment of North Korea's role, which was considered to be limited to providing logistical support or cannon fodder, has now been revised. North Korean units are currently engaged in combat operations on Russia's Kursk front and beyond, with reports indicating significant casualties. Furthermore, as the duration of their involvement extends, the North Korean military is undergoing a qualitative leap in its operational capabilities due to this real-world combat experience. North Korea no longer attempts to conceal its involvement. This military action has become the foundation for concluding a comprehensive strategic alliance treaty with Russia and has served as an opportunity to secure Russian support across the wide spectrum of economy, technology, and other policy dimensions. In light of this development, it is essential to examine the ongoing restructuring of the Northeast Asian security order. Now in North Korea invites three excellent speakers for this issue on the Ukraine-Russian war and North Korea's military power. Nicolas Levi, the French-Polish professor of Polish Academy of Sciences, will talk about technological and economic compensations that North Korea is receiving from Russia, and more specifically, the qualitative transformation that it is achieving through IT, cryptocurrency technology cooperation. Yannick Smaldore, who is an editor-in-chief in a French media Naval News, will be focusing on the weapon systems and tactical experiments that North Korea is deploying in this war. He points out that North Korean army is possible to evolve into another type of private military company for other regions. The director of Geopolitics Research Network, Mykhailo Samus, examines how North Korean soldiers are enhancing its military capabilities through this war. He emphasizes that only 3 states worldwide have experienced this new form of war, many labeled as drone war, which is particularly worrisome given that North Korea is one of them. A huge implication for many countries in Europe and East Asia.
I am an assistant professor at the Polish Academy of Science at the Institute of Mediterranean and Oriental Culture. Discuss about the main topic of our discussion is related to the presence of the North Korean army in the conflict, which is opposing the Federation of Russia and Ukraine. The conflict between these two countries started on the 24 February 2022.
About North Korea, Russia rapprochement, and then better relationship. Now they are de facto or de jure military alliance. They are allies, for the having war together. And then Russia actually provide quite of economic resources, for North Korea. To compensate those sacrifice of tens of thousands of soldiers in the Ukraine-Russian war front, right?
The most important element, which is at the basis of the support, let me say, from Russia to North Korea, is based on the fact that Russia is providing a certain quantity of raw materials to North Korea, including petroleum products, which are important for the maintenance of the energetical sector of North Korea. Unfortunately, due to the opacity of the North Korean state, it is impossible to determine which quantities of energy are provided to Pyongyang and which amount of money does it represent. On the other side, we can consider that this energetical support is used for North Korean military companies and factories, which, based on this energetical support, are able to produce higher quantities of ammunition, of military technologies, which are later sent to Russia. In other words, this Russian support is bringing not only some benefits to the North Korean state, but also to Russian military capabilities. Most important resources which are expected from Pyongyang are resources which are fundamental for the existence of the North Korean regime. These resources are, from one side, the raw materials that we mentioned, and on the other side, the other important element are financial assets which are transmitted to North Korea. The form of these financial assets are either cash or banking transfers. Why banking transfers? We already know that Russia has a specific banking system which is complying with the North Korean banking system. This financial and cash support is especially important for the North Korean leadership, as these amounts are collected by the North Korean leadership. What I mean by leadership consists of the most important families, not only the Kim one, there are several other families who are raising this amount in a case of a collapse of the North Korean state.
All right. Then, you are the expert of North Korea's cryptocurrency subject. And I read, some of your writings on it. And what about those cryptocurrency related to North Korea and Russia? And Russia might help, North Korea to get on the, cryptocurrency technologies and then, market too?
There is an important cooperation in the context of these illegal operations involving the cryptocurrency, let's say, sub-industry, where a certain number of North Korean IT specialists were educated in the Federation of Russia, and a certain number of these North Korean specialists were also working in Russia. It has been proven that several IT systems, not only in South Korea, but also in Europe, including Poland, also in Asia. We speak here about dozens of millions of dollars which were raised by these IT North Korean specialists, and which amount are globally coming back to the North Korean regime.
Right. And this is a very big question, for the students of North Korean politics, where those human resources, say, the hackers and the engineering scientists or developers get education. And then you say Russia is one of the educating, institutional, the ground for the North Korean hackers or North Korean developers.
There is a certain number of education programs which are realized between North Korea and a certain number of foreign states, not only Russia and China. However, there are more and more countries which are thinking about making forbidden some specific fields of education to North Koreans. So those North Koreans are not going to be able to get a fundamental knowledge. As an answer, in the previous years, the North Korean state invited to Pyongyang a certain number of foreign specialists by organizing some cryptocurrency conference and so on. However, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, these conferences did no more take place, and also a certain number of these foreign specialists, when getting back from North Korea, were arrested, especially in the US. In other words, I do think that the education of these North Korean IT specialists will be mainly realized in the country with which North Korea is establishing treaty of education cooperation. And these countries are not only Russia and China, but I guess also Vietnam.
First of all, I'd like to thank you, Professor, for inviting me to participate in your research and share my thoughts, analysis, and estimations on very important point. Why it's very important? Because, last night we had, again, Russian attacks, not attacks on the military targets, not attacks on the military objects and forces, but just simply for civilians. So we have a Kiev, it's kind of 2 million city capital of Ukraine, very beautiful, but Russians regularly attacking our capital and in other cities, of course, the big cities, small cities, doesn't matter where's missiles, it's ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, it's supersonic and hypersonic missiles, which is a Kinjal. It's a new type of missiles launching from the Russian aircrafts like MiG-31 and kamikaze drones like Shaheds. For example, last night it was attacked with approximately 600 of Shaheds and several dozens of ballistic cruise missiles and hypersonic missiles, Kinjal. The cruise missiles, both it's a naval-based missiles and air-based missiles from the strategic bombers. So we have a very complex problem. Why we're talking about DPRK now? Because it looks like a Russian and Ukraine. Russian aggression, Ukraine defending, okay. Russia has some attempts to occupy some territories, which is they pretending to be Russian, historically, etc. But why we're talking about this with you and looking at your region, because from our point of view, from my point of view, from our experts and analysis here in Ukraine, that Russia building not just a cooperation with different countries, for example, to avoid sanctions or to get the components which is under sanctions for Russians, because to produce such a missiles like Iskander or cruise missiles like Kaliber, it's a naval-based missile. They need components. Russia doesn't produce the high-tech materials, microchips, or components. Where they get it? They get it from China. They get it through different countries, like a third, fourth countries, like making a special schemes to get these components and producing missiles, etc. But, for example, they using approximately 6 million rounds of ammunition against Ukraine per year, annually. Half of this ammunition provided by DPRK. So without North Korea, it's impossible for Russia to continue this war. This is very paradoxical, maybe strange for observers, which is think that Russia is absolutely great power, but no, Russia created a real system, and system consists of different flows of materials, of components, of money, of the ready product, and this system basically consists of Russia, China, like a hardcore, because without raw materials, without buying, China is buying of Russian oil and getting money. Components, microchips, systems, drones, it's impossible for Russia to continue this war and producing missiles, drones, etc. But China has a hardcore of flaws between Iran, Russia, and DPRK to produce, to get raw materials, to get money, to get products. And what is important, I think it's the most important for you, that it's a flaws of technologies. So Russia testing missiles, testing different systems, components, they trying to get better systems. Like, for example, when they started in 2022 attacking Ukraine with cruise missiles, for Ukraine, it wasn't a problem to hit these missiles because they were stable on GPS, jamming, spoofing, etc. Now they adapting, they getting better understanding how to avoid GPS jamming, how to avoid jamming and electronic warfare problems. And the main problem here, as I think, they sharing this experience. They sharing this experience with China, with Iran, and DPRK. So this is like a systematic, strategic impact on all of readiness of this group of countries, which is pretending to have a new leadership in the world, on the global leadership, like China saying that they don't want to have a war with anybody, but at the same time they're pretending on the global leadership. Of course, they are talking about economy, but the problem is that they have a proxy, the proxy forces like Russia, Iran, and DPRK. Iran got the problems now with United States strikes, and they really got the bad consequences of these strikes for their capabilities to continue this the proxy war on the Middle East. But still, DPRK and Russia continue to make problems for West, for Europe, for United States, and of course they're fighting against Ukraine from Chinese point of view. This is our understanding. So China, when China supporting DPRK and Russia in the war against Ukraine, they creating the problems for United States, for South Korea, for Republic of Korea, for other countries like Japan, and of course for Europe. So this is very strategic picture. This is very strategic problem. It's not just, the producing of the ammunition on the plants on DPRK, which could be used against Republic of Korea if we have a new conflict between North Korea and Republic of Korea. But the problem is that transfer of technology given absolutely new understanding and new capabilities for North Korea to be prepared for new war. I give you examples that from our information, DPRK already started to produce the drones looks like exactly like Russian Lancet. Lancet's a middle strike kamikaze drone or loitering munition, which have pretty bad impact on the Ukrainian front, which have a range of up to 80 kilometers, 10 kilometers, very precise weapon. And actually, if we imagine that DPRK could produce thousands of these Lancets, it's a problem for Republic of Korea, because I know that the Seoul not so very far from the DMZ, and it means exactly 70-80 kilometers. So if you imagine that hundreds and hundreds of Lancets, I'm talking not of Shaheds, because in the same time DPRK, I'm sure that DPRK already got the technology how to produce Shaheds, both for Russia and for own needs. And if they have these producing of Shaheds and Lancets just to send and use to against the Republic of Korea, against the industrial areas of Republic of Korea around Seoul and other cities, it's a huge problem, because in reality Ukraine has an absolutely great experience how to build new air defense system, adapting for these hundreds and hundreds of loitering munitions every night. Because I told you, this night, I mean the previous night, we had 600 Shaheds. The Shahed, it's a pretty big machine to kill everything. I mean that they have like 50 or 80 kilograms of explosion materials on the board, and even they slow, even they not very, I would say, clandestine from the air defense. But the problem is that they're using a lot. So if you imagine the 600 of Shaheds in the sky, on the Seoul sky, it's a problem. Because if you have can you imagine if you have the air defense systems, even Patriots, even NASAMS, all of Republic of Korean made, it's a great air defense system. We're using the missiles, but one missile costs like 10 times more than Shahed, because Shaheds now cost like $100,000. One missiles costs at least 1 million. One missiles for Patriots is a 5 million. So if you count how many missiles you need to clean up the sky from 600 Shaheds, of course, together with the dozens of ballistic missiles and cruise missiles, you will find that it's impossible to sustain such a ratio between Russian and DPRK capabilities to use several hundreds drones and missiles every night, and any country, including the United States, including all of countries of European Union, NATO, it's impossible. That's why Ukraine, for example, using a multi-layer approach. So we have drone interceptors. So we have a drone, small, fast drone interceptors with artificial intelligence to kill Shaheds. Another, so we have a mobile groups everywhere on the country, which is using, of course, the artillery, but it's not so so effective. It's like a 20th century approach. But drone interceptors with artificial intelligence, very effective, because any soldier could push the knob and start the drone, and drone will find by itself the Shahed and kill it. Second, we have light aviation. It's kind of famous Super Tucano Embraer type aircraft. This is very effective because it's adaptive, and this is cheap to use because they have guns with electronic combat management system. So it means that it's very effective to use against Shaheds, for example. And we have another layers. It's a helicopters, which is again have electronic combat management systems with guns. Of course, we have fighters like F-16, but it's very expensive to use F-16, and they have a different speed with Shaheds. It's very dangerous for fighters because the fighter has supersonic, maybe under supersonic, but still very high speed. The Shaheds has 200 kilometers. It's a little bit higher speed than a car, actually normal car. So if you imagine that you are jumping up on the capabilities, jumping up on technologies, I think you know about the development of North Korean naval program, naval missile program, the submarine program, and it's maybe for somebody it's a paradoxical that exactly after 2022, when Russia started to communicate and cooperate with North Korea very intensively, these programs I named, started to develop very fast. I suspect that this is because of Russian transfer of technology. The same we see in Iran with like development of different type of drones, of missiles. For example, the precision of North Korean missiles like developing very fast. I told you when we got in Ukraine the first strikes on KN-23 North Korean missiles, it's a very similar to Iskander missiles, ballistic missiles, 500 kilometers range. It were not very precise. They just could attack one object, but like hit 1 kilometer aside. But now it's the same precision like Iskander, like Russian missiles. It means that Russians send to North Korea the same system to North Korea to put on these missiles, and after they send these missiles to Russia to use against Ukraine. Of course, these missiles could be used against Republic of Korea, against Japan, and against United States and other countries in Asia Pacific region. So we think our understanding of the situation, and we have a contact with our our Korean colleagues from Ministry of Defense, from different think tanks, and I always saying that colleagues, dear friends, we have the same problems because Russia and China preparing the DPRK for war, and this is exactly what we have now. I know that just now in these days, North Korea conducting exercise, military exercises, and very intensive military exercises, definitely preparing for the next generation of the conflict, on the war. And I think that this is the crucial to understand that this is not just cooperation, just producing ammunition for Russians. This is a systematic approach to be prepared for the war against countries of your region and our region. So Europe and Asia Pacific is, and now it's paradoxically, but sounds paradoxically, but we are the same.
Yeah, I mean, very informative and detailed and insightful comments on the North Korean troops and then weapon systems provided, for the Russia in the Ukraine-Russia war front line, and its implications for multi-layered the political aspects across Europe and then East Asia and then Korean Peninsula. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. I mean, well, let's start with some big picture theory or analytical framework. And I myself, it's South Korea and North Korea, especially North Korea. North Korea's military presence, involvement, engagement in Ukraine, Russia-Ukraine war. It's the spearhead of this regional security convergence between Euro-Atlantic region and the Indo-Pacific region. So a little bit smaller than NATO's eastern flank and South Korea, North Korea, Korean Peninsula. This is a huge change in the global security structure last a few years. And South Korea doing its own part too. South Korea is providing cutting-edge technology weapon systems such as K2 main battle tank, K9, self-propelled Howitzer and FA-50, Red Strike fighters, on and on, and cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, for the Poland and then Central Eastern European country and then Nordic country, of course, include Baltics. So this is real security convergence, spearheaded by this, unfortunately, or paradoxically, North Korea and South Korea. Then let's jump into a little bit more detail. Then you explain about how vastly improving the North Korean soldiers and North Korean troops combat capacity. It's either anti-drone or using drone weapon systems, and the electronic warfare they are getting familiar with, and on and on and on. So I remember, and when they showed up in the war front, they are very shrewd and experienced and skilled, combat, soldiers. And then what's your take on it? And then how is it really possible from Ukraine point of view?
Thank you for your question. Absolutely. Yes, when they just arrived, and I mean the North Korean soldiers and officers, they use the older field manuals, the older understanding. Why I told that this is a problem, I think that only 3 armed forces now in the world understand how to fight in new type of warfare, with drones, with controlling everything with impossibility to using the mechanized detachment and support. This is real change of the battlefield, and the robotic system now, one of the main part of the battlefield in European countries. They still don't understand it. For example, in Ukraine, we have the separate branch in our forces calls the unmanned systems, responsible for doctrines, for development, for producing, for providing all of robotic system, including drones, aerial drones, land drones, and sea drones, which is pretty famous in the Black Sea.
Black Sea, yeah.
Yes, and it's a paradox that Ukraine destroyed a Russian traditional Black Sea fleet without any fleets. I mean, in Ukraine, because we lost our fleet during this war with Russia, but nevertheless, we built a new fleet with drones, and it works, and it's very cheap, very effective, and change everything in Black Sea. Now you have a big ship, means you have a dead ship.
Big target, right?
Yeah, it's a target. It's only targets. It's impossible to use it on the functionality. So if you're looking at the North Koreans, actually Russians and Ukrainians, they studying and creating a new tactics actually on online. I would say on the real time. So when you're trying to send your soldiers on attack, and understand that if you using a traditional tactics of platoons, of companies, absolutely doesn't work. So Russians now, because since December of 2023, we have offensive operations from Russia. Because in 2023, we had Ukrainian offensive operation. Now we have long Russian offensive operations in Ukraine in defensive position. So Russia needs to create a new offensive tactics. What they use now since 2024, they use so-called penetration of small groups tactics. So they don't use any columns with tanks or armored vehicles. They don't use a huge group of soldiers like a platoon. They use only small groups, like 2-3 soldiers, or maybe even one soldier, trying to make it's a two tactics, or very fast using bikes, using any device to be fast of crossing the kill zone, which is actually could be 10 kilometers before positions. It's a kill zone using everything to kill soldier. So this soldier needs to be very fast and try to cross the line and penetrate to positions, avoiding Ukrainian defensive positions, because it's possible. We have a 1,000 long front line, so it's not it's a possibly physically to build the wall here. So they still have some holes to penetrate, and after this to get the position underground and wait for another soldiers for several days without food, without water. It's crazy tactics, but it works sometimes. And North Koreans started to study this. So they need to cross the kill zone very fast and concentrate in some clandestine zone, especially if they have a village or they have some urban area. It's better to concentrate than in like in the field and in the open area. So Russians they transferring this experience to North Koreans, and North Koreans trying to use it. And if you look at the Kursk operation, when actually North Koreans were used, so you're absolutely right. They were without any experience, and after several months, they started to be experienced soldiers and officers. What is very important, the officers understand how to use command and control, because it's now they have a command and control by using tablets and phones to send the information. Or they use so-called multi-cognitive approach. Actually, multi-cognitive approach, it's better to use for robots, but Russians using human beings here. What does it mean? That the squad commander, given the showing the points on the map where this group of soldiers separately should reach, and after this, every soldier by himself, trying to approach to these points. 80% of these soldiers will be killed, but 20% could be reach of the points and wait for another 20%, and after this they have a group of soldiers which is waiting for another command, which points they need to go. Of course, moving to the points means to kill all of enemy, to trying to be autonomy, etc. So in Ukraine, we're trying to use this technology for robots. Russians use it for human being. And I suspect that DPRK will use this technology and tactics for human beings. And because like Putin, like DPRK, they don't care about human being life. They don't care about it. And this is a problem for us and for you, that they don't care about life. They send in the soldiers understanding from the first point that 80% of these soldiers will be killed in the first battle, but still continue to use these tactics. In Ukraine, we cannot understand how it's possible to use this actually people of your country, but this is normal for them. And this is a problem for us, for Ukraine, for South Korea, for Republic of Korea, for all of democratic states, that this is impossible to understand. But still, this experience, I think, one of the most dangerous things what happened on this cooperation between Russia and DPRK.
Last question, for you, and I have much more, and then we will find another chance, to discuss more. I mean, in person too, if possible. On defense industry, the one is on the North Korean defense industry, and then the second one is South Korean defense industry. The first one, you say, North Korean defense industry has been improving, making progress a lot across the, say, army and Navy, and then probably Air Force, if we say drone system is included. How do you evaluate a little bit more? And in Russia's playing a very important role. China is a little bit reluctant, but what other deal you say is drones and then naval ships? I would love to listen to your opinion. Very short, probably 2 or 3 minutes. And then number 2 is South Korean defense industry. I think you are closely monitoring South Korean defense industrial cooperation with the Central Eastern European country, which has a huge implication for Ukraine right now and in the future. And then South Korea is filling the arsenal of Poland and other countries in the Central Europe, and then that it can transfer the Soviet produced weapon system for Ukraine last a couple of years too. But after you say Ukraine's defense industry has been improving, especially drone and unmanned teaming, MOM-T, or say unmanned weapon system, and then South Korea is, I think, it's desperately needed. But at the same time, Ukraine need weapon system from somebody else too, And how do you foresee in a South Korea, Ukraine, South Korea's defense industrial cooperation in the future? 2 questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. For first question, I think that we shouldn't say that it's the Russia and DPRK have some limitations. For example, we have information that Russia and DPRK discussing the transfer of Sukhoi 34 fighters. It's a very, very sophisticated aircraft. I would say that this is one of the main problem of Ukrainian front, because they're using smart bombs. They're using intensively. Every day we have 150 smart bombs launching from this aircraft to Ukrainian positions, and this is, believe me, it's a problem, because it's a bombs with a range of 70 kilometers, and it's very difficult to. It's not missiles. This is a heavy destructive weapon, and if North Korea getting this Sukhoi 34 aircraft together with some aviation technology, like a traditional aviation technology, I think it will be a challenge for Republic of Korea, Japan, United States, and another country, because it's a really changing it's a changing of the rules of the game on the region, because still North Korea doesn't have the modern aircraft. The Sukhoi 34, it's a very sophisticated piece of equipment. I think it will be the impact. And of course, the Russia is when Russia transferring all of these technologies, they invest in to North Korea. I think that they could use North Korea like literally like a plant for outsourcing to producing the high technology for Russians. But of course, they with condition that North Korea will keep the technology in producing, keep the technology of how to create this product, how to use this technology in other products. It's really a problem. The second question about Ukraine and South Korea. Now it's a main supplier for Poland, for example, and it's a great. I'm happy for both Poland and South Korea that they found this great cooperation. I know that Romania, for example, on this way the same. I have a lot of friends in Romania, and they are very happy that they could get this great new cutting-edge technologies in all of spectrum, from armed vehicles, artillery system, missiles, and maybe fighters from Republic of Korea. And I'm happy for Poland and Romania, but I'm not happy about Ukraine, because still about cooperation. South Korea, Republic of Korea has own internal limitations of sending weapon to zone of conflict, and I understand this position, because it's a geopolitics, it's a foreign policy. You need to be on balanced position in your region, so it's creating have impact on position of South Korea. For Ukraine, in Ukraine, we have a prohibition of export for military technologies, goods, and even dual use goods. I think it's a problem, because in Ukraine we are pressing of our government to allow to export to our friends extra production from Ukrainian defense industry, because now Ukrainian defense industry producing annually the weapon and another system for $10 billion, but we have potential for another $20 billion with foreign investments, all for foreign markets, because Ukrainian Ministry of Defense can buy only $10 billion production, not more. This is a limitation. So we need to open it, and if we open it, it's possible to export some technologies and products to Republic of Korea. From other point of view, in the same time, Republic of Korea could open some possibility and opportunity for South Korean companies to participate in cooperation with Ukrainian companies, not maybe selling weapon, but maybe cooperation in technology, creation, producing, etc. So, to be honest, we working even with our Korean colleagues every day to find the ways. Unfortunately, we didn't find ways yet, but we hope to find it on a practical level, because I am participating in some project with real Ukrainian producers and weapon producers, and they are very keen to and very optimistic to have joint projects with Republic of Korea. Still, we have problems. Even we have Ukrainian investors and Republic of Korea investors trying to be together. Still, we have political problems. So I hope that we break these problems and will work together for joint, not only profit for businessmen, but the better readiness to protect our countries from the enemies.
All right. This time, welcome Yannick Smaldore, Arion Group. He is one of the most, popular, military experts in France and the Western European country. And then I think he is going to make a presentation on evaluating the DPRK-Russia military partnership, weapons and manpower, and then strategic impact. The floor is all yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Peck, for this opportunity. It's a pleasure to join you today, especially as the topic we're addressing is of utmost importance, the growing military cooperation between North Korea and Russia. At the CAPRI, the Center for Analysis and Forecasting of International Risk in Paris, as in all strategic research centers in Europe, we are closely monitoring this situation and its possible developments in Ukraine and more broadly in Europe and the Western sphere of influence. Before addressing North Korea's involvement in the Ukrainian conflict, it is then important to recall the broader geopolitical context. I will not go in too much details about that, as I would only be repeating what has already been discussed in previous sessions of this forum. But briefly, beyond the existential territorial struggle for Ukraine, the war between Russia and Ukraine has a truly global dimensions, particularly on the ideological front. It can be seen as an opposition between autocratic regimes and democratic regimes. By late 2023, Pyongyang's diplomatic support has evolved into logistical support with the delivery of weapons and the dispatch of troops to Russia, and later into strategic support marked by the signing of a security agreement between North Korea and Russia. On another level, and even if it's not exactly the topic of this lecture, it is worth recalling that the war in Ukraine also indirectly involves South Korea. Indeed, South Korean defense industry mainly have become key suppliers of weapons for Ukraine's main European allies in Central Europe and Northern Europe. And so, to some extent, South Korea is also involved in this conflict. Returning to our main topics, so direct military support North Korea has to provide to Russian forces. We can see on this brief timeline that Pyongyang began supplying massive weapons to the Wagner Group as early as 2022, including via Syria, and part of this equipment was immediately transferred to the Russian armed force. So the need for North Korean weapons was there from the beginning of the invasion in Ukraine. So officially, the strategic rapprochement between Russia and North Korea only began in September 2023. Yet the speed and scale of the deliveries, the weapon deliveries, suggests that such an agreement must have been prepared months earlier, maybe since the beginning of the war, or at least since Russia started losing battles and a lot of munition stockpiles. So according to multiple observers, including the MSMT, more than 20,000 containers of weapons and ammunition have been shipped by sea from North Korea to eastern Russia, and from there to the Western Front by train. It remains difficult to establish exactly what type and quantities of weapons and ammunition were transferred, but battlefield reports, as well as American, Ukrainian, and South Korean intelligence, give us some reliable estimates. So, on ballistic missile side, we know for sure that KN-23 and KN-24 ballistic missiles of North Korean origins have been used on several strikes on Ukraine territory. At least 150 of these missiles were delivered according to different sources. We can estimate that maybe 200 could have been delivered, even if not all used for the moment. Those missiles are about 700 to 900 kilometers range, so they're mainly used to target. Concerning the quality and the quantity and quality of ammunition, that was a big subject since the very beginning of the North Korean deliveries. As I mentioned, the exact manifestos of the shipments are unknown, of course. We just know approximately through satellite imagery that around 16,000 containers have been delivered by April this year, and the number may have reached 28,000 containers by mid-July and July. So depending on calibers that were in those containers, this could represent 10 to 14 million shells in total, according to high estimates. Operationally, while early reports suggest poor quality, particularly in artillery shells and propellant, the situation seems to have improved quickly. Ballistic missiles, on the other hand, appear to have been drawn from active regiments, active North Korean regiments, rather than aging stockpiles, and have shown good overall reliability by Russian standards since the beginning of the deliveries. So even if a lot of observers, Western observers, were hoping that concerning the tactical use of those weapons and ammunition, as I mentioned earlier, North Korean shipments appear closely tailored to Russian needs, both in type and in timing. First, as I said, the artillery shells are used to overwhelm Ukrainian artillery on the front line with long-range firepower, including with the 170 millimeter caliber North Korean guns. Second, the ballistic missiles are used to conduct a long-range strike, including on civilian targets, in order to saturate Kiev's deliveries appear to match Russia's major offensives. This limits the storage time for these munitions, during which time the stocks are more vulnerable to Ukraine's strike and sabotage. Worth noting also, Russia does not seem to use North Korean ammunition for its tanks and other armored vehicles, likely due both to sufficient domestic stockpiles in Russia and to the fact that North Korea still largely uses outdated calibers in its own tanks. So there are only a few stockpiles of 125 millimeters ammunition in North Korea, so they are keeping that for themselves. Okay, so beyond armed deliveries, the Moscow-Pyongyang agreement also involve, and that's very important, the dispatch of North Korean troops, mainly soldiers and skilled workers, to sustain Russia's war efforts. According to the MSMT, by late 2024, at least 11,000 North Korean troops were deployed in Western Russia. Today, this number is likely closer to 14 to 15,000, depending on of the wounded, with unconfirmed rumors suggesting an additional 20 or 30,000 to follow by the end of the year or maybe next year. That's not confirmed for the moment, but we have to monitor this situation. Among this personnel, Russia, high-ranked officers and ministers has confirmed the arrival of 1,000 combat engineers and 5,000 military construction workers in the Kursk region, tasked to rebuild infrastructure after Ukraine incursions in these areas. It also appears that Moscow has authorized, or may soon authorize, North Korean citizens to enlist directly in the Russian armed force, bypassing the bilateral framework. It was already seen with other citizens from other countries, so there is no reason that it won't also happen with North Korean citizens. Most deployments of North Korean troops are concentrated for now in Russian Kursk and Belgorod regions, where they can help contain Ukrainian raids and rebuild civilian and military infrastructures. But North Korean personnel have also been involved in, for example, training Russian troops on a new weapon system, as I said earlier, carrying out also complex combat engineering missions, not only in the Belgorod and Kursk region, but also on the Ukrainian soil. And also, that's not confirmed for the moment, but probably conducting UAV reconnaissance operations, as those operations now are in the center of every artillery regiment and building regiments. There are also indications that some North Korean soldiers may have been deployed on Ukrainian soil, possibly under Russian uniforms and equipment. Authorities remain uncertain. It is unsure if they are Russian military from North Korean origin, or if they are North Korean soldiers transferred through the agreement between the two countries. So, yeah, the fog of war, it's kind of complicated to have precise details about that. In parallel, though, we can note that around 15,000 North Korean civilian workers are employed in Russia, with another 500 expected soon. It is possible that some of them could later transition into direct military contract with the Russian Defense Ministry. Concerning the combat loss, that's also an important point. It is difficult to estimate North Korean losses, although several Ukrainian strikes on troops and concentration and ammunition depots were widely publicized. They were aiming for North Korean equipment and troops. Current estimates put North Korean casualties at around 5,000, mostly wounded. So some of them may have been may stay in Russia, be healed, and go back to combat. So for the moment, around 3,000 reinforcements have reportedly been sent from North Korea to replace them. Ukrainian intelligence has also noted that North Korean troops quickly adapted their tactics and procedures to reduce further losses and avoid Ukrainian fireback. So they are learning. They are learning fast. Having examined the scale and scope of North Korea's support to Russian forces, it is essential to understand why Moscow seeks to these closer partnerships. Russia's interest goes beyond immediate operational needs. It reflects strategic calculations shaped by both short-term pressures and long-term ambitions. Beyond Putin's geopolitical vision of a revanchist global south, Russia's short-term interest is quite clear. First, they want to compensate for industrial shortcomings in producing ammunition and artillery pieces. They want to secure foreign production facilities also, safe from Ukrainian strike and sabotage. They already have done that with the UAVs and also, of course, they want to replace combat engineers and border troops that were heavily depleted over the past 3 years of war. So yeah, they need also fresh troops in order to send their own citizens in the front. In the longer term, a steady inflow of both North Korean soldiers and civilian workers could help offset Russia's manpower deficits and delay the need for general mobilization. That's also an important political point for Moscow, to delay the general mobilization. So if you can have fresh troops from abroad, it can be easier to maintain peace in your own country. Another strategic goal for Russia is to reinforce North Korea as a regional proxy in East Asia. By restoring Pyongyang's technological and economic leverage, Russia enables North Korea to reassert itself as a regional power. These forces, the US, South Korea, Japan, and their allies, to devote more resources to monitoring and containing North Korea, resources that might otherwise have focused on Russia's own activities in North Pacific. To a lesser extent, this Moscow-Pyongyang rapprochement also weakens China's monopoly over North Korea. We'll get on that later. Overall, this new strategic partnership between Russia and North Korea weakens regional balance, particularly the stability of the Korean peninsula. It is probable that this will notably delay the process of normalizing diplomatic relations between the two Koreas, and in particular the process of reunification, which is now even further away, from my point of view at least. So let's keep to the North Korean point of view. For Pyongyang, the short-term benefits of the participation in this war were also huge. By deploying troops, specialists, observers, in Ukraine, North Korea gains access to first-hand lessons from modern high-intensity warfare. Its forces can rapidly acquire skills they previously lacked, particularly in the use of tactical drones, FPVs, and also electronic warfare. That's very important. So Ukrainian battlefield does become a real laboratory for North Korean military innovation, both in conventional weapons and in new generation systems. We should note at this point that, of course, it's not the case only for North Korean observers. All the main Western suppliers of weapons to Ukraine do the same. They are going on the field, they are looking at what the Ukrainians are doing, and they are learning from them and from their struggle. At a more basic level, These deployments are also exports, just exports. They bring in foreign currency in North Korea, as well as the Russian oil and gas deliveries, which are vital for sustaining North Korea economy and producing consumer goods for North Korean citizens. Through these partnerships, North Korea also gained access to military technology transfers, while, of course, talking about electronic warfare equipment. That's probably the most important point in the short term. In the longer term, maybe it could also help with the modernization of North Korean air defense, possibly delivery of new fighter aircraft, and even maybe Russian support for developing nuclear-powered submarine in North Korea. That's probably one of the main subjects of this discussion between Pyongyang and Moscow. Anything that would help reduce the current massive technological gap with South Korea, but also Japan and the US. North Korea could also benefit from new Russian services, such as satellite imagery, updated electronic database for the electronic warfare equipments, maybe maritime transport, also hydrographic missions that could help with the deployment of submarines. In the long run, the Moscow-Pyongyang rapprochement may have far-reaching consequences, not only in Ukraine, not only in the Korean peninsula, but also worldwide. North Korea is re-emerging on the international stage, not just through diplomacy, but by participating in a major conflict on another continent. So this boosts Pyongyang's prestige, especially in the global south. The end of its exclusive relationship with China recalls also the Sino-Soviet competition in the 50s and 60s, competitions which has fueled North Korea's early industrial development. So maybe with a new competition with China and Russia in order to charm a little bit North Korea, it could also lead to a new industrial development of North Korea. Russian support at the United Nations may also help break North Korea isolation, potentially turning it into a significant arms exporter to the global south, and maybe later an exporter of other goods for civilian use, for example. Finally, North Korean veterans could in the future become military contractors, either privately or under state direction. North Korea might thus position itself as a provider of battle-hardened private troops, kind of a Wagner group, but from North Korea. That's a possibility also that cannot be forgotten. These elements suggest that North Korea's involvement in Russia and Ukraine poses security and geopolitical risk to South Korea. From a security standpoint, South Korea could find itself in the coming years with thousands of well-trained North Korean soldiers positioned just a few dozen kilometers from its capital, and with a northern neighbor capable of rapidly producing modern weapons tailored for export, so with quality standards higher than what could be expected from North Korean industry so far. That could be a potential problem for South Korea. From a geopolitical perspective, the mutual defense agreement between Moscow and Pyongyang alone represents a major problem for Seoul and its allies. In addition to that, financing the North Korean system could strengthen its stability and make economic and diplomatic rapprochements with South Korea less necessary. This would permanently rule out, a possibility of reunification, from my point of view. For Europe and the broader West, Pyongyang's sustained support demonstrates that the pro-Russian bloc is willing to directly engage in this war. This raises the risk of escalation, including in other European states bordering Russia and Ukraine. Beyond Europe, Russia could also use North Korea as a proxy, either directly or, as I said, through some private military branches that could be fueled with North Korean soldiers. So a proxy to act in Africa, in the Middle East, or in Asia, in effect extending what Wagner Group has already been doing in these regions.
Point you made is potential North Korean PMC, right? Private military contractors, like Wagner Group of Russia, a few years ago. Do you really think that North Korean PMC is possible and on demand later on in other parts of the world?
Oh, for me, it's quite a certainty, but it's quite a certainty that some North Korean citizens, at least, will become PMC.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for me. That's for sure. Maybe they will join Wagner groups or other groups. You can't have thousands, 10,000s of soldiers sent to other countries for months, maybe years, learning to live away from the Kim's regimes, and hoping that all of them will go back in North Korea and became workers in factories or in the fields. So at least some of them will become PMCs, or maybe just Russian state soldiers. Also, that's a possibility. Is it possible that there will be North Korean private companies? I'm not sure, but North Korean state-owned private companies, that could be a possibility. That could be a possibility. We are not sure for that. It would depend. If the conflicts goes for maybe 2 or 3 more years, for example, with that could be a possibility. If the conflict ends in the following months, maybe not. So, but that for me, that's a possibility to keep in mind also for South Korea, because we see with Wagner Group that Wagner Group was used in Africa to fight, or in Middle East also, to fight French and US soldiers directly, confrontations with Russian troops fighting French and US troops and losing mostly, but without the Russian flag. They were a Wagner Group. So for South Korea, it could be also worrying that North Korea could have private military contractors fighting South Korea interests worldwide. So
yeah, I think so. I mean, now it's North Korean troops are proving their capacity, which is vastly improving in the combat battleground, and then they have a more capacity to combat or battle outside of Russia is entirely possible, and it has a huge military implication for the Korean Peninsula